Welcome back, everybody. We're doing a deep dive today on, well, I'm sure you've heard of him, Elon Musk,
Yeah, he's a pretty hard guy to miss in the news these days.
to say the least. We're going to try to cut through the noise, though, using his Wikipedia page as a kind of roadmap for our conversation.
It's good to me.
So think of this as a highlight reel of a life that's, well, pretty unusual,
Right. We've got rockets, we've got electric cars.
and a whole lot of controversy, which we'll get to later.
Definitely. Can't ignore that.
But first, who is Elon Musk? And,
Mm-hmm.
why should we care about him? Why is he worth a whole deep dive?
I mean, on a very basic level, he's the head of Tesla, SpaceX, even Neuralink, and now X, which used to be Twitter. So, he's having a pretty big impact on, well, a lot of things.
Technology, social media, even
Yeah.
space exploration, right?
Exactly. And his life is kind of like something out of one of those science fiction books he loves.
He said himself that he was a huge fan of Heinlein. Now he's trying to, turn those sci-fi dreams into reality.
Yeah. I mean, the guy's trying to build a colony on Mars. Doesn't get much more sci-fi than that.
Pretty wild. But let's rewind a bit. Early life. Elon Musk, born in South Africa, comes from a wealthy family, but, things weren't always easy.
Yeah, his dad, Elon Musk, was an engineer. There's a little bit of debate over how much he was involved in emerald mining, but point being, money wasn't an issue.
But family dynamics, that's another story. Elon has been pretty open about having a tough relationship with his father, even, experiencing bullying from
It
him.
makes you wonder, right? How much of that shaped his drive to, prove himself, become super successful.
For sure. Kind of flips the script on the billionaire playboy image, doesn't it?
A bit. Shows even someone like him had to deal with some serious stuff early on.
Humanizes him a little, maybe. But, okay, so he goes to these prestigious schools in South Africa, but then actively tries to dodge military service during apartheid.
He gets a Canadian passport through his mom, which, pretty clever.
And he's never been shy about his disapproval of that whole regime in South Africa.
Shows resourceful, right? But also a willingness to, bend the rules if a system doesn't align with his values.
And that kind of sets the stage for what comes next. Moving to North America, first Canada, then the U.S. This is where the whole entrepreneurial journey begins.
Yeah, we're talking Zip2, and of course, the big one, PayPal. But remember, he'd already coded and sold a game when he was, 12?
Super impressive for a kid, right?
Yeah.
But it makes you think, was it all raw talent? Or did his background give him a massive head start?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Resources, connections, a supportive environment, that all plays a role. Lots of brilliant kids out there might never get that chance.
It's like he's playing the game on easy mode, and others are stuck on, legendary difficulty.
Exactly. And that's not to take away from his accomplishments, but it's worth considering.
Add some nuance to that whole self-made narrative we often hear.
Yeah.
And, okay, PayPal, huge success, leads to the PayPal Mafia, which that's something we got to dig into.
Oh, yeah. The PayPal Mafia is basically a nickname for this group of early PayPal employees who went on to do some pretty big things.
We're talking founding YouTube, LinkedIn, SpaceX, even Tesla. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
This group, with Musk right in the middle, shaped the internet as we know it.
No doubt about it.
And for Musk, selling PayPal to eBay, that was just the beginning, right? He had way bigger ideas brewing.
That $1.5 billion payday probably helped fuel those ideas.
Definitely didn't hurt. And this is where we see those ambitions really take off.
Two companies in particular become synonymous with Elon Musk, SpaceX and Tesla.
Pushing boundaries, trying to reshape the future, it's a wild ride.
Yeah. Gets pretty complicated, too. Lots of ups and downs and definitely some controversies along the way.
Yeah, we're going to get into all that. But first, SpaceX. What was it about space that captivated Musk's imagination so intensely? Hashtag TTS, the Deep Dive, episode 2025-01-26, part 2 of 3.
SpaceX, it's not just about launching satellites or sending astronauts up for a joyride. It's about making humanity a multi-planetary species.
Okay, so we're talking full-on, colonizing Mars. I mean, that's a pretty huge leap from PayPal, right?
Well, he's called it a life insurance policy for humanity, like a backup plan in case, something catastrophic happens to Earth.
I get that. But, how do you go from selling an online payment system to building rockets? That's not exactly a typical career path.
He actually started by trying to buy rockets, believe it or not, from Russia, no less.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah, he wanted to send a small greenhouse to Mars, just as a proof of concept to get people excited about the possibility. But the Russians wouldn't sell him the rockets for a price he considered, reasonable.
So he said, fine, I'll do it myself, and decided to build his own rocket company.
Basically. That's kind of his style, though, isn't it? Hit a roadblock, build a whole new road.
Yeah, that's pretty Elon.
Ugh.
But building rockets is, like, insanely complex and expensive. How did he even begin to tackle that?
He put together this team of, like, seriously brilliant engineers, and they pretty much started from scratch.
Trial and error, lots of explosions, that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah, tons of early failures, rockets blowing up on the launch pad, the whole 9 yards. But they kept at it, iterating and improving their designs. And one of the big things that sets SpaceX apart is their focus on reusability.
Right, the Falcon 9. The rocket that can land itself back on Earth after launching into space. But how the heck does that even work? Landing a rocket upright seems like something out of, well, science fiction.
I know, right? It's pretty mind-blowing. The Falcon 9 has these grid fins that pop out during descent to help steer it, and these crazy powerful engines that fire to slow it down as it gets close to the landing pad.
So it's all about super precise control and timing.
Absolutely. The whole landing process is a carefully choreographed ballet of engineering and physics.
And being able to reuse those rockets, that must bring down the cost of space travel significantly.
Oh, it's huge. It's like, imagine if you had to buy a new car every time you wanted to go somewhere. That's basically what traditional rocket launches were like. But now, with reusability, it's more like taking a taxi.
Makes sense. So SpaceX is making spaceflight cheaper and more accessible.
Exactly. It opens up all sorts of new possibilities for exploration, research, even commercial ventures.
And they're not just sending stuff into orbit, right? They've got the Dragon spacecraft, sending cargo and astronauts to the International Space Station.
You got it. And then there's Starlink, which is a whole other level of ambition.
Starlink, remind me, what's that all about?
Well, basically, it's Musk's plan to launch thousands of satellites into orbit to provide, really fast internet to every corner of the globe, even the most remote areas.
So he's building, like, the internet infrastructure for a multi-planetary civilization. That's wild.
It is pretty far out there, but it's actually happening right now. Starlink is already up and running, providing internet service to millions of people.
Wow. Okay, back to Mars for a second. Musk has some pretty out there ideas about how to make it habitable, like nuking the polar ice caps to release carbon dioxide and warm up the atmosphere. Isn't that kind of extreme?
Most scientists think it's not really feasible, and yeah, a little extreme might be an understatement. But, it's Elon. He likes to think big and bold, even if it sounds crazy to most people. And hey, at least it gets people talking about the challenges of, colonizing another planet.
Yeah. Fair enough. So from trying to nuke Mars to launching sports cars into space, the guy definitely knows how to grab headlines. But let's shift gears for a minute and talk about Tesla. Was his decision to invest in electric cars purely about business, or was there like a bigger mission at play?
He said his main motivation with Tesla is to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy. He sees climate change as a serious threat, and he thinks electric cars are a big part of the solution.
So saving the planet, not just making a buck.
That's the story, at least. And Tesla's whole mission statement backs that up, to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy.
They've definitely shaken things up in the auto industry. Sleek designs, cool tech, and those cars can really move.
No argument there.
But Tesla's had its share of problems too, right?
Absolutely. Production delays, quality control issues, and then there are the controversies with autopilot and that whole full self-driving thing.
Right. And speaking of controversy, we got to talk about that funding secured tweet that got him in hot water with the SEC. What happened there exactly?
Oh, back in 2018, Musk tweeted that he had funding secured to take Tesla private at like $420 a share. The stock price went nuts, but turns out he didn't actually have the funding lined up.
So a classic case of overpromising and underdelivering.
Yeah, basically. The SEC accused him of securities fraud, and he ended up settling, paying a $20 million fine and stepping down as Tesla's chairman for 3 years.
So those impulsive tweets have gotten him into trouble more than once, huh?
Yeah, I guess sometimes his fingers move faster than his brain.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole Solar City thing, which a lot of people saw as a big conflict of interest.
Solar City, refresh my memory.
So it was a solar panel company that was not doing so hot financially. Musk was chairman and the biggest shareholder. Then, in 2016, Tesla acquired SolarCity in a deal worth billions.
I see. And the conflict was?
Well, critics said Musk was basically using Tesla's money to bail out his cousin's company.
Oh, okay.
There were lawsuits from shareholders, but eventually a judge ruled in Musk's favor. Still, the whole thing left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths.
Yeah, it's like he's a magnet for controversy, whether he means to be or not. But let's move on to something even more futuristic. Neuralink. What is that all about?
Neuralink. They're developing these brain-computer interface chips, implantable chips, mind you. Think, treating neurological disorders, enhancing human capabilities, even merging our minds with AI.
Hang on. Merging minds with AI. That sounds straight out of a sci-fi movie. Are they actually making progress on that? Have they implanted any of these chips in people yet?
Not any humans, no. They've done a bunch of experiments on animals, though, like pigs and monkeys. They released some pretty wild videos of monkeys controlling computer cursors just by thinking. But so far, no FDA approval for human trials.
And I bet there's a whole lot of ethical concerns around that, right?
Oh yeah, big time. Animal rights groups have been pretty critical of Neuralink's treatment of the monkeys they've used. Musk says they're committed to animal welfare, but it definitely raises some red flags. I mean, anytime you're messing with brains, especially living ones, there are going to be some serious ethical questions to consider.
Okay, that's a whole can of worms we could probably spend a whole deep dive on. But I think it's time to address the elephant in the room. Or maybe we should say the X in the timeline. Elon Musk buying Twitter and then turning it into X. I mean, talk about a chaotic situation.
It's been a wild ride, that's for sure.
He came in, claiming to be a champion of free speech, but things got weird pretty fast.
Yeah, he fired thousands of employees, let a bunch of previously banned accounts back on, including, Donald Trump. And those changes he made, not exactly popular with a lot of users and advertisers.
So, he bought this platform with hundreds of millions of users and decided to use it as his own personal sandbox.
Yeah.
No regard for the consequences.
It definitely ruffled some feathers. And while all this is happening, Musk's wealth just keeps growing. We're talking richest person in the world kind of wealth.
Yeah, which gives him a level of influence that most people can't even imagine.
Right. He's got this huge platform to shape public opinion and push his own agenda, but it also makes you wonder about, the concentration of power in the hands of one guy, especially someone who seems so impulsive.
Yeah, good point. There's a lot to think about there. We've only scratched the surface of Elon Musk's story, but I think it's time to switch gears and talk a bit about the man behind the headlines. Elon Musk, the person. Hashtag TTS The Deep Dive, episode 2025-0126, part 3 of 3. We spent a lot of time talking about Musk's companies, his ambitions, the whole public persona. What about the guy behind all that? He's had a pretty interesting personal life, to say the least. Multiple marriages, big family.
Yeah, 12 kids from several different partners. And it's kind of interesting, right? Because he talks a lot about declining birth rates, calls it a threat to civilization, but then...
He's got a pretty full house himself.
Exactly. He's taking matters into his own hands. But then you look at his relationship with his eldest child, Vivian Jenna Wilson, and, things get complicated.
Yeah, Vivian's transgender and has legally changed her name, said she doesn't want anything to do with him.
And Musk has made some pretty controversial comments about it, talking about losing a son, even referring to her as dead.
Those comments didn't exactly go over well, did they?
Not really. A lot of people saw them as transphobic and hurtful, especially coming from someone who's usually so vocal about, individual freedom and all that.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a contradiction. Advocating for more people, but then struggling to accept his own child's choices. Makes you wonder, how much of his beliefs are truly his and how much is influenced by, who knows what.
It's tough to say for sure, but it adds another layer to the whole Elon Musk puzzle, doesn't it? And speaking of complicated, we got to talk about his politics. I mean, he went from being seen as relatively moderate to, pretty openly supporting right-wing figures and causes, especially after he took over Twitter, or X as he calls it now.
That was a pretty sharp turn, right? Alienated a lot of folks who used to be fans.
Yeah, he's been all in on endorsing Donald Trump for 2024, even became his biggest individual donor. There are even rumors he might get a cabinet position if Trump wins.
A Department of Government Efficiency or something like that?
Something like that. I mean, love him or hate him, he's not afraid to make a statement, that's for sure.
No kidding. And it's not just politics. The guy's a gamer too, believe it or not. But even that managed to stir up some controversy.
Oh yeah, that whole account boosting thing. People found out he was paying others to play for him in games like Diablo 4 and Path of Exile 2 so he could climb the leaderboards.
He denied it at first, right?
Yeah, but then eventually admitted to using those services. Didn't exactly win him any points with the gaming community.
Seemed kind of hypocritical for a guy who's always talking about hard work and pushing yourself to the limit.
Definitely feeds into that image of him as someone who, doesn't always play by the rules. He wants to win, even if it means bending the rules a bit.
So after all this, after taking this deep dive into Elon Musk's world, what's your takeaway? Genius, maverick, villain.
He's all those things at once, isn't he? I mean, you can't deny his brilliance, his drive, the way he just wills things into existence. But there's a darker side too, a recklessness, a disregard for norms.
He's a walking contradiction. Wants to save the planet, but also talks about nuking Mars, champions free speech, but then silences anyone who criticizes him.
He's a product of his time, for sure. Embodies all the amazing potential, but also the dangers of technology and unlimited wealth.
Yeah, it's a story that's still unfolding. Who knows what he'll do next, but one thing's for sure, it's going to be interesting to watch. Anyway, that's Elon Musk, folks. As complicated and fascinating as they come, hope you enjoyed the deep dive. Thanks for listening.